3, 2, 1. Talk to me.
Okay.
Talk to me.
Okay.
Three, two, one. Talk to me.
Okay.
Talk to me.
Okay.
All right, welcome to 10-inch FPV. You want one, don't you? Just like I did here, watching all the other YouTubers flying their Helium 10s, except they're expensive, or you don't know if you want to spend that much money. So the option is you either buy your cheaper one from a different brand, or you build it yourself, just like I did right here. So this is the GEPRC Pulsar LR10. This is a $150 frame, depending on when you buy it right here. And the question is it worth it? So this is my full build log. I should have done this back in April, but I've been dragging my feet. But as with most of my build logs, we're going to do final thoughts first, and then we'll get right to the build log. Okay, so like I said, I finished this thing here in April. We've had some issues, definitely some things to consider when you're going up, because I've built a 7-inch. You can check out this other build over here if you want to. It's been flying like a champ. I built it, it flies. I don't have to do anything. This one, on the other hand, we've definitely had some issues, but look how huge this thing is a major, this is a big quad. It's X-Class, okay? It's got a big footprint. It's got big props. It looks amazingly huge. But the real question is it more efficient? Is it actually worth it? Or is my 7-inch better than I should have said, and instead of a 10-inch? All right, so let's talk about some of the issues here with this one compared to when I built my AOS UL7. Okay, so this frame right here by itself is already like 580 grams. It is pretty heavy duty. I went with the Johnny FPV 3115 motors, which is recommended for a 10-inch, but these are the 1050 kV instead of what most people recommend at 900. So I wanted something that was going to be a little bit faster, and I was hoping that the efficiency I lose on having a higher kV would be made up by having a 10-inch quad. I don't know if that was realistic. Maybe I should have asked ChatGPT first. Okay. Secondly, I started with a Speedybee F405 V3. It was rated at 50 amps per ESC, which has been working just fine with my AOS UL7, but this thing definitely consumes more amps consistently than a 7-inch does. And somewhere along the line, I was testing out a 5,000 milliamp battery. I was just hovering. I went to go do a quick barrel roll from a hover, yeah, and the ESC blew up. Now, was it Speedybee? We don't know. Was it my bad soldering because I'm not a champion at it? I don't know, but I've never had any issues before. So we're going to say it was an ESC issue. So I upgraded to a Speedybee V4, which is rated at 55 amps per ESC, which should be fine. And I was just having weird sounds coming out of the motors. And then I finally upgraded to the SkyStars F7. That's like 60 amps per motor. And so far it's been flying good. And we've been doing fine there so far, okay? But yeah, when that ESC blew up, it cost me a lot of money, okay? It fried the GPS unit, it fried the receiver. I don't really know what happened, but we had to buy back in for like $125 to get this thing back up into the air. Okay, so with that being said, I'm still trying to figure out if this is more efficient. I've been flying it with lithium ions, I've been flying it with lipos, and trying to see if I'm gonna be getting more range. Now at 25% throttle, cruising speed with maybe like a 30-ish degree up tilt, I am pulling consistently about 20-ish amps, which is a little bit higher than my 7-inch, which typically pulls, I don't know, 12 to 15 amps at low throttle cruising speed right here. But this thing does sound beautiful. It is a floater. It is pretty quick. It is heavy, okay? So once I put on a 4,000 milliamp battery, whether it's the 4,000 milliamp LiPo or I put on one of my 6S2Ps, this thing's coming in right at 2 kilograms. So this is a heavy brick. So there's more testing that needs to be done, but what are my general recommendations as I reflect back on this? Get yourself a good ESC, okay? Like get an F7, something or other. You're gonna want that because this thing is gonna pull some heavy amps here. You may want to go with the 900 kVs. Maybe it's gonna be a little more efficient. Maybe that would be pulling less amps for one reason or another. But the overall body, the chassis on this thing is super long from front to back, which is great because you got a lot of space for batteries and whatnot. The problem with that, in my opinion, is that I'm running a Vista on the front, not an O3 air unit, a Vista, okay, or a Caddx, whatever you want to call it, okay? And so I had to figure out how to get the air unit more towards the front because they only make particular camera cables that are only like 200 millimeters, and I needed 250 if you want to use the mounting slots in the back. So if you're doing an O3 air unit, you'll be fine. With that being said, I was having some issues with the video feed. It just doesn't seem strong enough. I've been boosting it. It's getting a little bit better, but I had to find a 6-inch UFL to RP SMA from the back to the front to make up that gap. I don't know if that's part of the video transmission issue, but we're still working those details out. With that being said, this thing looks great hanging on the wall. It's huge. It's not something that travels easily. You definitely got to take the props off. So far, my 7-inch is still my favorite. I just took that on a trip, but hopefully over this winter, I can test this more, figure out what the issues are, and then get back to you with a more refined post-build reflection, if you were, on how I still feel about this. So on to the build log. Let me know your thoughts. As I said, some things have changed on this since I finished this in April. We had some major issues and some minor upgrades, but aside from that, the build log itself is still pretty solid. All right, everybody, today we're building a 10-inch FPV, and it's going to be my first 10-incher as well. I'm excited for this. We're getting into macro quad territory here. I recently built a 7-inch. It's the AOS UL7. You can watch that other video. I'll put a tag up somewhere. That thing has been flying amazing for the last year, and I thought, hey, 10-inch, why not, right? Let's just spend some more money. It's an expensive hobby. So we're going with the GEPRC Pulsar LR10. They actually make an 11-inch frame as well. Not a whole lot of information on this frame. I only seen like Kramer FPV has a video assembling the frame. I'm sure he has a build log coming soon, and one other person who was just flying it. So there's not a whole lot of information out there. I don't even know if this is a good frame or how it's going to fly or anything like that. So I'm just putting it out there. I'm putting myself out there for you guys. So, you know, use the affiliate links. It helps support the channel and all of that great stuff. So we're going to open this up. We're going to take a look at this and all the different parts. So let's get right to it. Here's everything that's in the box. So there's a lot in here. We definitely need to address some issues and concerns with the frame and where you're going to place your electronics depending on what you're using. I'll do that after I get through all of this stuff right here. So first up, it's a dead cat style frame here, so the arms are going to be out to the side. Yes, so you won't have any props in view, which is one of the reasons why I chose this over their other ones that were a little more affordably priced here. Yes, but if you look at these arms, yeah, super thick, heavy duty, 7 millimeters thick. Yes, I mean, these aren't going to break. They're definitely going to be able to take a hit or a crash, but you probably shouldn't be crashing your long range quad anyways. It's really just cinematic smooth flying, maybe mountain surfing, diving, and all of that great stuff. So the rears here, nice and long. Okay, we've got this wishbone that's actually going to go in the middle here. We're going to do the assembly. This is going to help keep the arms in place from the front and the back. Yes, we've got camera cage components right up here. And what's really nice about this too, on the top and bottom plate, right, is they have the stuff notched out. So it's going to go in there. This is the top plate actually, right? So it's just going to like seat in there perfectly, which is really nice. Okay, so we've got this, we got the top and the bottom plate. I'm going to leave the bottom plate here too, so we can look at all of the spacing. This is really important. This is an issue that I've had to work out here. So where you're going to mount your VTX and ESC and all that great stuff. Yes, this piece is going to go on top and sandwich the arms. We're going to look at that, but let me just keep moving through this. So we've got some stickers. Okay, cool. All right, we've got these other camera pieces over here. Yes, we've got some nice TPU bits and pieces here, right, that can hold the GPS. It can hold a crossfire antenna out the back if you've got one. Yeah, we've got your GoPro mounts. All of that stuff's up here, so that's really nice. We got some battery pads up here so things don't slip and go out of the way. They're giving me 2 straps here at 250 millimeters each in length. Hopefully that's long enough. We're going to find out, especially when you're using like a huge battery like 21700s. A cool little carbon fiber GEPRC keychain. We got instructions over here on how everything goes together, which is really nice. And then you've got your bag of nuts and bolts and screws and all of that great stuff. But let's come back over here to the frame itself and the issues that you might want to consider beforehand that I'm having to consider. So if we look at this overall, front to back, it's about 340 millimeters in length, which is right around, 13 inches. Okay, that's cool. So on the back side here, we have some mounting points, yes, for your VTX. Okay, you got about 3 different points where you could put a transmitter for video feed, right? And they've got their different 20 by 20, 25, and then 30 by 30 here. Okay, and then once you get the arms sandwiched in there, this plate's going to go on top, and then this is where your ESC is going to go. And then obviously the camera is going to be in the front. Let me flip that over so you can see the little notches here. Okay, so if you're using an O3 air unit, that's not a problem, because when you're back here, right, you can get a camera cable that is 300 millimeters, which can reach all the way to the front. Okay, so if you're going to mount it right here on the frontmost point, yeah, you're going to have to get a larger camera cable at 300 millimeters. 250 millimeters might be just enough, give or take, but we will see. However, if you are using a air unit like I am, the longest cable you can get is only 200 millimeters, which makes it not long enough to get to where the camera is going to be way up here in the front. So that means I had to come up with a different way to make that happen. So either I buy a 200 millimeter cable and I shift the camera forward, and I'm going to make a mount right here that goes in the center, and then I have to buy a RPSMA and a UFL that goes out here the back. That would be 50 to 70 millimeters. Or I mount the camera in the front, and then I get just an antenna cable, an RPSMA to UFL, that is about 300, right? 250 to 300 millimeters, okay? So let me show you what I did and how I worked that out. So I made some 3D prints here that look like this, okay? It's gonna be an air unit holder. This one is for the rear, okay? And so if we put this right back here, there's gonna be some standoffs here, okay, that are going around. So you have 4 standoffs here that are gonna protect everything, and you have another one here in the center. So I made something where I can slide this over, and if you wanna keep your Vista or your air unit, whatever you wanna call it here, in the back, you could do that, and you can use the 200 millimeter camera cable to the front and maybe a 70 millimeter UFL toward the back, and all is good in the world. The problem with that is it's about 20 bucks for a set of 2 for the camera cables that go to the front, and maybe 5 bucks out the back here. So you're looking at least $25 just so you can get your air unit in the appropriate place. Or I've got this other one. I made this other one right here and tested it out so that now I can take the air unit and place it in the front of the quad, which is perfect. And it'll fit right here behind the camera cage and everything like that. And then all I need is a UFL connector or an antenna that goes all the way to the back. So a 10-inch will fit just perfectly. I haven't figured that out, but I did get a 12-inch one as well, which might be too much. I don't know. We're going to find that out at a later point in time. So things to keep in mind, depending on what type of video transmitter you're using. If you're using HD0 or something like that, I believe they have extra long cables for you. So you're good placing it back here. So really it just seems to be an issue if you're using an air unit, which I am. On that note, that brings us to electronics here. So I'm going to be using this RunCam Link Wasp. I've just had this laying around. I bought it last year for no good reason. So this is what I'm installing because I didn't feel like buying another air unit, and I'm definitely not buying an O3. It's a little bit out of my price range. For the ESC and flight controller, we're using the Speedybee F405 V3. I've had this laying around for a year as well. So this needs to go into something. So that's exactly what we're using for. Rated at 50 amps should be more than enough. And the exciting stuff, motors. I'm going to be trying out these Performance FPV Johnny FPV edition motors. And these things are monsters. These are 3115s. Okay, this thing's a honker right here. Yes, super huge. 3115. And I actually went with the 1050 kV motors. So let me know in the comments below if you like my rationale here, but we know a 10-inch is going to fly faster and a little more efficient than a 7-inch or something that's smaller. So it's already going to go faster because of its size, and then you're going to get more efficiency because of its size. So I thought, why not just put some slightly higher kV motors so we can go even faster, and any efficiency I would have gotten because of the larger size frame or props will make up for the speed that I get right here. Yeah, so I just want something, yeah, it's going to be long range. It's going to be efficient. It's probably going to fly way longer than I need it to, but I also want it to go fast too. So I'm going with something with a slightly higher kV for funsies. And just for reference, this is what a 3115 looks next to a 2207. I picked these up recently, so this is what you might typically have on a 5-inch quad. Oh, look how cute it is. It's so small. And then some final electronics here. Of course, you're going to want GPS on a long-range quad. So while I was on their site, I got the GEPRC M10DQ. We'll try it out and see how it works, but usually they all do. So it's an M10. Also, I got some of their ELRS receivers while I was there. I got a dual one. Yes, when flying long range, I usually get a dual range receiver right here. And then we also get the Wi-Fi GPS mate. I install this on all of my quads with GPS. So you can use this to pre-power the GPS so it starts up, it gets its connection lock, all of that great stuff. This is a total time saver. And then it keeps the GPS powered in between battery swaps as well. So I always have these. These are always amazing to have. So let's start putting the frame together, shall we? All right, so after putting this together, here are my thoughts and what I might do differently. So this will help you for assembly. I would still put those 4 screws in like we did all the way around, get the arm set, put that little wishbone piece in here, and then when it's time to put this sandwich plate right here, hold the drone sideways carefully, place it like this, and it's gonna push out the longer screws. It's gonna push them back out, which is fine. But then get these ones with the press nuts in there started, and each corner starts this one. 1, 2, 3, 4. Get those 4 started, bring it down so that it's nice and secure, and then slide these longer screws right back up through. Because the hole is, there's a pretty good tolerance right there where I actually had to screw through the hole to get the screw to come up. So yeah, and if you have an electric screwdriver, that might be helpful too. So front of the quads over here, we've got 4 20mm screws that are gonna go in just like this. So these 2 in the front part of the front arms, and this is gonna be the frontmost part of the rear arms. And then for the second hole of the arm, it says 14mm on the instructions, but the bag I have only says 15mm. I'm gonna assume that's the right size. And then we'll start sliding those arms on over the screws. So we got something that looks like this, and then the next component naturally is gonna be this wishbone piece that goes between the front and rear arms to keep them from moving around. So I'm just gonna drop that in here. And you might have to wiggle the arms just a little bit or loosen things up, but it'll start to slide right into place nice and easy. And now we got something like this. Doing it on a completely flat surface might be a little more beneficial than working on top of an uneven mat. And then we're going to take this plate right here, which is going to sandwich everything together. These 2 pieces need to slide over these front and rear long ones, and these 2 smaller ones are going to screw right into these press nuts that are inside. Now this thing is rigid AF. This thing is solid with the arms. Hope you never break one, because I wouldn't want to have to take it apart again, but you know, solid. 25mm standoffs right here, and the standoffs are on. And now we have the 35mm standoffs, 3 in the front, 3 in the rear. So 1, 2 on the very back, the center post, and then on the front, same thing, 1, 2, and 3. 35mm standoff with a 12mm screw. So this is the back 3 right here. And now the front 3 are done. All of our standoffs are installed all the way front to back. So 3 long ones on the front and rear, 4 here in the center. And now we can put the screws in for the stack. It's going to be 4 24mm screws. Yes, and it's nice that they leave holes here so that we can take these in and out without having to totally disassemble everything later on. Now's the fun part. I'm going to start installing the motors, but what I'm actually going to do for right now is I'm only going to put 2 screws into each motor on the far side. I'm going to put 1 screw in each motor just to kind of hold it in place on the closest side to me. The reason for that is because after I get everything soldered to the ESC, I'm going to flip it upside down so I can glaze the bottom side with conformal coating. So I've done this enough times. If you don't use conformal coating, especially for long range FPV, you should definitely do it, but there's nothing more than a big old pain in the ass than putting all of your screws in and all of your motors only to have to undo them all so you can flip it upside down and get to the bottom for the glazing. So that would be my pro tip of the day. Now they do include 10mm screws, which are going to help get through the arm. The screws that come with the motor aren't long enough, so that's always a nice touch as well. 1 down, 4 to go. 4 motors done. Look at that. Barely fits on screen. That's how big it is. Guess I could turn it this way, yeah. So looking pretty good. All we need to do is just put the ESC on here. We could start soldering down the motor wires and take that first step. All right, so as mentioned, I'm using the Speedybee F405 V3 right here. I just love looking at it in the case, right? It looks amazing. That's just the nerd in me. So we got the flight controller on the right side. We got the ESC over here. So now we need to kind of like mount it up and start coming up with some ideas on, you know, where we want the capacitor to go, if that's going to be a problem. Where do we want the power leads to go, and are they going to be long enough, the ones that came here? So I'm going to lay this in here, and I'm going to get an idea. I'm going to take the top plate, or I want to put this on top and see, like, where exactly do I want my power cord to come out? Usually I'm going to have it come out the backside because the GoPro is going to be mounted up here, so that doesn't really leave a space here. We got a ton of space for a battery up here, even a 2P. And I have those, and I'm going to show you at the very end, okay? So we have a little space right here which might be beneficial. And let me grab the TPU. So this is one of the TPU things that they provide for you, right? This is going to hold your antenna out the back. This does need some modification for me. I did have to drill this out already because, of course, I was test fitting things like that. We'll talk about that at the very end when we get to more installing the Vista and the air unit. But you're going to have to drill this out so it slides in there easier. But okay, so if I take this, and this is going to slide over the mounts right there. So we've got a nice little notch where we can have a cord come up. So I'm going to need to figure out how long the power lead needs to be. And if we look at what comes with the Speedybee kit, right? Obviously, that's not long enough to make it out the back. So I'm going to have to go get some of my own 12 gauge wire. I'm going to make my own XT60 here, right? I got to figure out what that length is going to be. I'll tell you here in a minute once I get that all figured out. But as far as the capacitor, right? I mean, we have tons of space here. Yes, just to put it right here anywhere we want to and out the back. I guess that is one of the benefits as well. If you're not going to be rear mounting the VTX, right? Because remember, I made something like this little 3D mount right here. I'm just mocking this up for you so you can just really visualize everything, right? But if you were going to use the air unit, yeah, and mount it right here and use a 200 millimeter to the front and a 70 millimeter UFL, right? That's actually going to get in the way of the power cords and the capacitor. So, hey, I'm glad that I decided that no, I'm actually going to mount this to the front. And this is what this is going to look like, just so we can really see everything since we're already here and talking about it, right? So now you can get an idea of what it's going to look like. If I have the air unit in the front of the quad right here, right? Plenty of space. I left myself just a little bit of space for the camera cable to come out the front, right? The cable is going to go all the way out to the back to the rear. So all in all, I think we're in really good shape here. I just need to figure out what that power cord length is going to be, and I'll tell you here in just a second. All right, I got it figured out. Also, don't judge me. I ran out of red 12 gauge, so I just pieced the red on the ends of the black that I had, so we know red is red and black is black. But if we just measure it down here on my little built-in handy-dandy ruler, it looks like the majority of cord needs to be at least 220 millimeters. And if we're talking from the end to the end of the XT60, we're just short of 250 millimeters or 25 centimeters. So if we pull this here now and kind of look at this more up close, if I was to push this right here where it will be, it's going to come out the back and it's going to poke out just that little bit. So this much will be protruding outside of this area here, which I think is enough, right? It's enough to bend and do whatever you need to do, but it's not so much that it might get nicked by a prop. I think that's the perfect length. So all in, survey says 250 millimeters. So that means now we can add the power leads and the capacitor here. So the dash right here, this goes to the negative part. Yes, and I'm going to put this on top. The capacitor is going to go on top, and I'm going to put it through these little holes right here. And then on the bottom side, I'll put the power leads. So something like this is probably good. So you can see I pressed it through. And then if you look on the back side, I just bent it right down. And now I'm going to actually ten these up right now. And then I can put the power leads on. So I've got this starting to set, and then now I'm going to come back and hit it with some more solder. So that's done. We got good liquefaction. I don't ever claim to be a great solderer, but that's pretty good for me. And then if I wanted to, I can come back and put some more over here and just really drive it home. Sure, why not? Looks good. Nothing's going nowhere, and now we can move on to motors. So I'm just going to use a little blue tape to hold the wires in place here. Eventually, I'll have a little 3D printed sleeve or motor wire cover that goes over this, but this works here. And then, I'm just going to stretch them all out, and the inside one will go to the furthest, middle to middle, and then the outside will go to the closest. So all my pads are tinned up. I got the first one done. We got 3 to go, and if I need to do any additional cleanup or topping, I'll do that at the very end. Okay, so all the motors are soldered up to the ESC now. I am happy with the way this looks. I don't know if you are, don't really care, but now I'm going to take this, I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to hit it with conformal coating. Let me zoom out just a little bit. Yeah, so this is the MG Chemicals 422C. I used to have the B in the before, but I've had that for years now. So this is my fresh, brand new bottle. Highly recommend. This stuff is great. 2 coats on the bottom, 2 coats on the top, and then we can move on to the flight controller. All right, so this is nice and glazed here. I put 2 thick coats over it. Both sides looks good. Now we can move on to the flight controller. Just keep in mind that if you're ever using conformal coating, you want to make sure that all your connectors are plugged into the plugs before you do that, just to make sure that no conformal coating gets in there. So now that this is all good to go, I can unplug this side over here. I'm going to actually plug it into the flight controller here, just so it's dangling out. All right, so now we're onto the flight controller. I'm going to put that here onto the screws in just a second so it's held in place while I'm soldering. But you know, we've got a few things we need to attach to this. So we've got GPS, so that's going to go up here to the SDA and SCL area, and that'll probably go on T6 and R6 most likely for me. And then we've also got the buzzer pad over here, which is going to be great because actually the GPS mate works as a buzzer too. So we just have to do the negative pad, I believe. And then obviously for the radio, we're going to attach that somewhere up here. I don't know if it's going to be number 3 or what else do we have up there. I think it's probably going to be number 3 most likely. And then we got to get the air unit set up here. So I need to solder this onto the air unit. Where is it? It's right here. Okay, because this does not come pre-wired. So that's really easy. You just, you know, match the colors up and follow the thing, and then it'll plug directly into the flight controller. So let's get right to that. First, I'm just going to do the air unit, so that's done and out of the way here. So the letters are really small, so if you can't see them, I'll read them to you. It's voltage, ground, RX, TX, and then the S bus. But it's pretty easy, right? The wires go in order. You don't need to cross anything. You just line them up one after the other, or you can also read the instruction pamphlet, which is right inside here. That's also pretty straightforward. Sorry, I've got magnifying glasses on. I can't see the screen over there, but you get the point. All right, so that's done right here, and you can just see red, black, white, gray, and you really only need these 4 right here if you're not going to be using like a DJI controller or anything. I just soldered them up because it's actually faster and easier for me to solder them here than to clip the wires or to depin it or to put some heat shrink over it. Yeah, just attach everything and call it a day. So now we're going to move on to the receiver here. This thing is small, but what I like about this is that it has the 2 UFL ports on the same side. So both my antennas can go out to the side like a T or a Y. The Happy model one that I have on my 7-inch, they have one on each side, so it kind of has a weird stretch to it. Right, it's on a diagonal. I don't like it. But when you think about where are we going to put this, if I put it in the front, I only have space right here because if you remember, we're going to be putting the air unit here, and I can't put it underneath. It's just inconvenient. And if I put it up here on the top, then that means my antennas have to run down the arm here and compete with the motor wires. I don't like that. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to place it here in the back between this triangle. Yeah, I've got plenty of space right here. And then I can have my antenna coming off like this, and then it'll be taped or something to the bottom of the arm. So that's going to be the best bet. Now, with that being said, right, they only give us a small amount of cord here or wiring. So I need to look at this. We're going to be using the UART2 ports. So if I run it off the top, yeah, I got plenty of space to make it here. If I run it underneath, in between, and sandwich it between the ESC and the flight controller, that's pretty good. If I try to run it all the way underneath and then back up, yeah, it's going to be an extra stretch, and that makes it really hard to get out and work on if I ever need to. So I think I'm going to take this, I'm going to solder it in this direction, and then this will go underneath when we're done. First, we'll solder the wires to the receiver, and then we'll put it onto the flight controller. I might even use my little helper hands to hold it for me. Everything's on there nice and secure. So we're going to tin all of this up over here for the receiver or the radio, T2, R2, 4V5, and the G for ground. For the compass over here, the GPS unit, SDA, SCL, 4V5, ground, T6, R6. So we're going to be using all of these, and then I'll do the buzzer negative as well, because I know I'm going to use that for the GPS mate. So that worked out pretty good. If you don't have any of these liquid flux sticks, I highly recommend you get one of these. Makes that a lot easier. So on the receiver, my RX is yellow, so that's going to go to the TX here. On the flight controller, right, everything always crosses RX, TX, TX, RX. And then the rest is pretty straightforward after that. So TX on the receiver is white, so this goes to RX over here. Red to red, black to black. And then I always like to give everything a little safety tug just to make sure all the bonds are solid and good. And then from here, you can just come through and twist everything back together. Yes, like this. Make it all nice and tight and organized. Yes. All right, now we can move over to the GPS. So before we move on to the GPS, we got a few things to consider here because we're inserting the GPS mate and what is going to go where and how. So we got a long distance to go from the flight controller to where the GPS actually is. Okay, now the GPS cord they give us, GEPRC, thanks very much, right, is only this far. Okay, so that's not even going to reach the flight controller, which is kind of a bummer because I'm building a big ass quad. Okay, and even if I were to use the cords that come with this, right, the longest one I have, still isn't going to reach all the way back here. However, there is a nice bit because of the fact that we're using this right here. So if we use this, we know that this is going to be here. Okay, we'll just kind of put everything together loosely. It's going to come out the back. And this gets connected to this, and then this in turn gets connected to the flight controller. So that's nice. Typically what I like to do is put my GPS mate on the back outside here so that I can flip it on and turn it on and off easily, and it stays here powered by this. But since I can't reach all the way and I don't feel like doing any additional work by lengthening wires or anything, I think what I'm going to do is I'm probably just going to install it back here since I have all of this dead space, and maybe I'll make a little 3D print or something that holds it in place right here with some screws, which will be kind of cool. But I'll be able to connect this to this, and then I'll use the wiring from here to reach and do the rest of the gapping. So I think that's exactly what I'm going to do. I'm going to figure out what the length is. Where do I want this? I feel like, I don't know, I should just put it right here in the middle. Doesn't that make sense? Right? And I'm going to cut the wires to that length and solder it to this. So with that being said, because this is, let me zoom in here so you can see this up nice and close. Okay, hopefully you can read that. Yep, great. So it kind of shows you what's going to what side, right? This is the flight controller side. So instead of reading upside down, just go with me. Okay, we'll pretend the flight controller's over here. So even though you're doing a double cross, because there is a TX and an RX and then a TX and an RX on the outside, the question is what do I do? Okay, so when you're coming from the flight controller, the RX goes to TX, the TX goes to RX. Same thing on the flip side when you start to connect to the GPS, the TX on this side goes to the RX on the GPS, the RX here goes to the TX on the GPS. It sounds like it's kind of stupid that it's like a double cross to go all the way through. I promise you, I've tried it before. It is not a straight pass through. Don't try to just, you know, cross it once and not do it on the back end. It's not going to work out for you. So what I do first is cut away the heat shrink right here around the SD and the SC, because we're going to have to add an extra piece here because our GPS does have a compass. And then on the GPS side, yes, you're going to cut away around here because what I'm going to do is solder directly to the pads. They do have a plug connector. Okay, I'm going to show it to you. This one, it comes with it, but it only comes with 4 pins, right? So then you would still have to solder 2 wires for the SD and the SC. So I'm going to save this and use this between the flight controller and the GPS mate for those 2 SD-SCs. And because the GPS already comes with its cord that has all 6 cables on it, it's just going to be easier for me to solder everything. It's going to look cleaner and we'll be good to go. So I got my little helper hand out again, and I'm just going to add a little more solder here to the SDC and the SD and the SC pad. And then everything right up here, I'm going to give it just a little bit more. So I'm going to use the green and the white wire here from this extra connector we're not going to be using. And I'm going to put the green wire on the D and the white on the C. It doesn't really matter. Now on the GPS side here, black to black, red to red. Now we have white, which is the TX on the GPS. So that's going to go to RX here on the GPS mate. Yellow is the RX on the GPS, so that's going to go to the TX here on the GPS mate. Green is C on the GPS, so that lines up accordingly with the C here on the GPS mate. And then D goes to D. Now for me, I always check for continuity just to make sure I don't have any solder blobs connecting or anything like that. So yeah, if you don't ever check with continuity or you don't have a multimeter, I highly recommend you get one. This will let you know if you have any shorts here, which you shouldn't, but I just kind of work my way down between the 2 pads, right? Nothing's going off. If it was, right, it would beep. And I just make sure, right, there's nothing happening. Because they're always so close, but, you know, same thing here. And I'll do the same thing on the flight controller too. Now we're ready to solder the GPS mate to the flight controller. I just have it taped down so it won't move around. So we've got all the normal wires that are going to be over here, positive, negative, TX, RX, buzzer, etc. And then we have these 2 extra wires, if you remember. White and green are for the compass. So the SD is green and the SC is white. So those will be these 2 pads up here. So we'll start off first easy, red to red, black to black, and then the yellow one, this is going to go to the negative buzzer. All right, so here we go. So now we've got the white wire coming off of the GPS mate, which is an RX. So that is going to go to the TX on the flight controller. And this just leaves the green one, which is a TX off of the GPS mate, going to the RX on the flight controller. And then we have the last two wires coming off of the compass, which will go here. These could be any colors that you choose, so it might not be white or green for you, depending on what type of wiring you have on hand. But remember, this is green is the SD for me, and that's going to go to the SD right here. So once again, I'm just going to check for continuity against all of my solder points here and here, just to make sure that I don't have any short circuits, and then we can plug in the air unit. All right, so we're pretty close here, so now we can put the air unit on. Remember, I've got this TPU bit that I created. You guys will have access to this in like a master pack that I got. Now keep in mind here as well that it's going to mount up here at this upper part, but there's about 9 millimeters between the plate and the arms to the lower plate, to the base plate. So I did come up with a little spacer that's right here. Where is this thing? Right here. That's going to go over this standoff and slide down. Boom. So that now when you slide this on top, right, this piece here that's sitting forward over the edge will have some support. How about a little close-up look at that? So we've got that in here now. Yeah, set up here on the riser. Yeah, I think that looks pretty awesome. And it's in here nice and secure. Got the camera. So I'm going to start plugging all of this stuff together just so we can do, power it up, make sure all of the electronics are great. Everything's spinning fine. I don't need to make any major corrections. After I've done test flights, that's when I come back and I do all of my final conformal coating on the flight controller because that's easily accessible, right? I'll reseal this. I'll put shrink wrap around this, all of that stuff once we get done with the final testing and stuff. So let's get this all plugged together. All right, now it's time for the moment of truth just to see if this thing's going to fire up and no magic smoke. Got a smoke stopper here. All right, we got the flight controller plugged to the GPS mate. To the GPS, great. We've got the receiver up here for the radio. We got the air unit plugged in up here, and I'm just going to use a simple 8-volt battery that I have right here, right? And yeah, I think everything is in order. So cross your fingers. This is always the fun, exciting, scary part. Okay, we're in business. So I think what I'm going to do here, this is on. This is good. It's probably not going to get any type of GPS lock because we're indoors. So I'm going to try and link this up to my goggles, make sure that the camera is working, and then we can come back and look at beta flight, getting the basics set up, all of that great stuff, and then we will work on motor directions and all that other good stuff. There was one small oversight, and luckily it didn't go catastrophic. Nobody mentioned that I don't have my antenna set up for my air unit. Now, with the digital units, it's really not that big of a deal, but I've heard for analog, if you fire this up without an antenna plugged in, that it could fry the system. Luckily, that didn't happen. But we actually just forgot what antenna we're going to use, because remember, we need to go all the way from the front to the back. So I have two antennas here. One is 10-inch, one is 12-inch. I'm going to get it out here so you can see. Okay, so this is the 12-inch antenna. Right? And if we're going to plug this in, even if it goes underneath, we have a lot of extra coming out here out the backside. And I think once I put the piece on, it's going to be a little too compressed. I don't know if there's a way for me to snake it around and underneath everything and get it to fit just right. The other option here is the 10-inch, okay, which I think is right around 250 millimeters, okay? And we have something like this, which is going to fit, connects to this, even if it goes underneath. Yeah, and this might be a better fit overall right here. So let me show you one of the things. I mentioned this before with the TPU, okay? So with this TPU piece, okay, it did need a little bit of fabbing afterwards, okay? So it's not perfect. Yes, so this piece right here I had to drill out with the 1/4 inch, okay? It just was too tight, so let me show you what this looks like, yeah? So obviously this piece is gonna come up underneath and come up. So as is, right now it goes in and out, but I had to ream it out a little bit with the drill bit. But think about this knobby part right here that has the, the hex, I can't think right now, the nut part of it, yes? So that needs to go up underneath into here and slide up to the top. And you can see actually that this one is not sliding in there easily. So I'm probably, if I use one of these two, I'm gonna have to ream this hole out even more. So I used a 5/8 inch drill bit. If you're in Europe, just, I don't know, Google what the difference is between 5/8 and inch and millimeters. But it needs to be reamed out enough so that you can get this up here and then up through the hole so that you can attach your antenna to it. So that is the only thing that there's some things that are missing with the way that they created their TPU mounts if you want to use them as is. If you're a little more crafty and you want to create one of your own, you could do that too. I may just do that at a later point in time. I don't know. But for right now, this does need a little bit of fabbing and DIY love before you can use this. All right, friends, I guess it's settled in. This is the 10-inch. Does not reach. It's short by like a 1/4 inch, but ideally you'd probably want another inch of slack as I push this down. So that means 12 inch it is. Okay, if you want your air unit in the front and you're not using a DJI-03, you're going to be getting yourself a 12-inch antenna cable. Well, that'll go and connect all the way from the back to the front. So let's finish putting this together, then we'll jump into beta flight, get this set up, we'll get the ELRS receiver hooked up, all of that good stuff, and see if there's anything that needs to be done with the GPS. So we'll wrap up on the camera right here. You've got these 2 plates that are going to sandwich the camera into a nice cage. They come with these little TPU gummies right here, and you'll see that these actually fit right inside quite nicely. But actually what you can do is you can just take these, see, here it is. Sorry, it just popped right back out. Come on, stupid. There we go. Yeah, so what you can do is you can just attach this to the side of the camera like 90% of the way and then slide the plates on. We'll be good there. And then this is going to go in the front. This is a standoff, kind of like a camera guard in the front. That'll connect down here with some M3 screws. And then you got something that looks like this. Now with the included M2 screws, those are 6mm, it says on the bag. They've already bottomed out into the camera here and it's still a little bit loose. So I don't know if they're too long yet, but I did test fit this and slide it in here. And once you get it into the slot, I mean, I guess there's enough pressure to the left and to the right that the camera holds its shape, but I can't tighten the screws down anymore to prevent it from rotating at all. So I'll let you know later on if I think those screws are too long and maybe you need something smaller, but I'm going to put this standoff in here now. We'll tighten things down and then we'll make a decision at a later point in time. So now we're ready for the top plate. All we have to do is line these grooves up, facing down over the camera cage, right? Get everything lined up, right? We've got these recessed holes here, and so we've got these M3x12 screws, yeah, that are kind of a, I guess, a flathead. I'm not using my words wisely right now, yeah, but that are going to sit in here nice and recessed and flush. So that's what I'm going to do. So this is a good start. I'm not going to do every single screw. I just want to make sure it test flies and all of that great stuff. I'm going to have to strip it back apart anyways. But the next thing that we have, yes, is we have the GoPro mount, and you can choose to use it or not. So you got the GoPro mount, then it has a piece of carbon fiber that goes in here and it seats. That way when you screw down the screws, yes, it doesn't pull into the TPU. So that's actually a nice little touch right there. On top of that, they have this piece right here, and there's nothing about this in the instructions, but my assumption is that if you're not going to use this, right, because it doesn't fit over the top, there's just not enough space for this to overline, but it does fit perfectly right here if you don't want to use the TPU mount or have a GoPro. And it looks like it's an extra protector for the camera up here. I could be wrong. I don't know. Maybe it's supposed to go on the bottom or something, right? And be like down here and protect, but that's not really in here on the instructions. So my assumption is that they put it here, right? If you don't want a GoPro or you're taking the GoPro off, and when you do have the GoPro, that is there, but I don't see any type of situation where the two of these work together, although they could, but this has the recessed holes in here like the rest of these, so that's what I think. So that'll be 3 14 or 15mm screws. Okay, and then we've got that right there, and then they also have this included hardware for GoPro, or I'm sure you could use one of the little twisty knob things if you want to as well. Overall, I think I'm put together enough to start tuning Betaflight and get the receiver set up here, motor directions and all that stuff, so we're going to hop into the computer in just a second. But overall, I mean, it looks good to start, and obviously when you see the actual flight, I'll have everything zip tied down before I put my final touches on it. One thing to keep in mind here, there's nothing really on the bottom to protect this when it comes in for a landing. So what I have so far is I've printed out these little bars. I did these for my OSUL7, right? They're going to go across right here. They're kind of like just little landing pads that go underneath for the front and rear. And then I have these little dots printed out as well that'll just go over a couple of these here. So it'll be like front and back, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I haven't figured out what I want to do yet for the outside to protect the arms. That'll come at a later point in time. But at the very least, if you're just landing nice and smooth and flat, like this is always a nice way to go, and add a little color style too. So let's hop into the computer. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is connect to the receiver ELRS. Right after about 60 seconds, it resets and it puts out a Wi-Fi signal. So we should be able to connect to that, see what the name is, and then we can do an update. And I use a passphrase, so that way whenever my receiver connects, it knows what the passphrase is. I don't have to do any binding per se. So here's my cool Wi-Fi network. Beef curtains. And you get one like this, Express LRS. Good, and then the website is going to be 10, oh yeah, see, look, and then sometimes it pops off. Great. So GEPRC Dual Diversity 2.4 Firmware 3.3. Okay, so we're going to come back to this in just a second. So we're going to go to ELRS Configurator, which is an app that looks just like this, and you need to be connected to the internet. So we're going to do that. We're going to switch back to my Wi-Fi network here. All right, so when you get to configurator here, right, we can take a look at what our different releases is, 3.31, 3.32. It says it's updated to 3.3. Sure, let's try and bring it all the way up. Hopefully there's no major issues with all of my other stuff having to update. So I have the GEPRC 2.4. Device is going to be dual diversity. Okay, great. And flashing method, we're going to use Wi-Fi because we're doing that. And when you come down here, you have some different things you can check, right? So binding phrase, I use that with all of mine. So it matches my receiver, it logs, it gets connected right away, super easy. Network value right here. This is how quickly do you want it to get into Wi-Fi mode. Once you plug it into a battery, I like 25 seconds. And then you can also add your home Wi-Fi SSID and the password. So that way when you turn it on here, it'll connect to that network. That's convenient. So let's give it a try and let's see what happens. You're going to hit build and wait for a little bit. And then I'm just going to drag this folder over to something on my desktop because it's always really lost wherever they put it. So now we're going to go back over to our Express LRS Wi-Fi network. I'm going to click on that. And you have a pop-up window here. Sometimes if you click on update, it'll allow you to update the file. Sometimes I have to manually go to the site. So see, this isn't working for me on Mac. So I'm going to come back over here, go to 10001. Yes, this is going to open up. You can see where we're at over here. We're going to go to update, choose a file. I'm going to check this folder and this firmware file that was just created. Hit update, cross your fingers. And for some reason, update failed. Why? All right, let's try that a second time. Okay, second time through, would work just fine. Great. So now we're going to head over here to beta flight. So I always like to connect first just to make sure everything's working. And you can see, if I'm moving the quad, so if I'm tilting it forward, it's tilting it, it's back, it's right, to the right, left, all of this great stuff. Okay, so let's do a software update first. Okay, so when you come to the update firmware section here, we're just going to do auto detect. We are on 4.5 release candidate 2. In the menu or in the instructions here for the GPS, it says to add other options here for a magnometer because it's got a magnometer and barometer. So I've been doing that, but it also tells me to type something down here in the custom definition, which has not been working. So I'm just going to skip this part for right now. And we're just going to do a standard update. So we'll load the firmware. It says success. Now we're going to flash it. There's nothing to back up because it's brand new. Okay, so the update is set now, so we can come in here and make sure everything's working right, forwards, backwards, right, left. If you ever need, if it doesn't look like it's sitting flat, you can hit calibrate the accelerometer, which is always quick and easy right here. That's great. Ports, let's go down here. So this is nice. It already knows that the receiver is on channel 2. Like, I don't know why it did that, but automatically, but that's great. MSP is activated on UART 4. That's because it's a Speedybee flight controller, which means I'm going to be able to connect via the app, which is great. And then right here on UART 6, this is where we put the GPS. So all we need to do is come over here, and I believe it is, yep, it's GPS, which is great. In peripherals, I don't think we need to touch any of this stuff over here. So we'll just hit save and reboot. And then moving our way down, let's see, configuration. So barometer, magnometer, yes, we've got that craft name. So let's just name it. We'll call it the Pulsar LR10. Okay, great. Arming, max arm angle, that should be at 180. Just in case you need to do a crash over flip. Air mode is on. Sure, that's great. GPS is good. LED strip, OSD. Okay, great. I'm not going to tinker with any of this stuff over here. I play with this stuff a little bit later on, but I'll leave it as is. For this stuff here, I think everything is good for right now. I don't know if I'm going to need to change anything for the GPS because the arrow on the top of it is facing towards the back of the quad versus towards the front. So we'll see if that has anything that needs to be changed. But yeah, so okay, great. So we'll save and reboot. And then we're going to come down here, power and battery. All of this is great. Minimum cell voltage 3.3. I only fly lithium ions typically, so we'll turn that down to 3.2. 3.15, why not? Max 4.3 is great. Warning cell voltage 3.5. Since we're not doing lipos, we can turn that down to 3.2 as well, so it doesn't start beeping and making a bunch of noise. I might change that at a later point in time. We'll hit save. Fail safe, yay! Okay, so fail safe. Of course, we're going to do GPS rescue here, and it's going to be stage 2. Right off the bat. Later you'll want to go do stage 1 to test it with a switch and make sure that it works and all of that great stuff. But I just go right to stage 2. Okay, so it's here. Period of time in stage 1 fail-safe after signal loss. So that's if you have stage 1. Fail-safe throttle delay, great. So initial climb meters, 30 feet, 10. Okay, great. Return altitude meters. Boom, that would be 90, right? Because we're all 3s here. Ascend rate, return rate, max pitch angle, that looks good. Descent rate, let's see here. Minimum satellites 8, minimum distance from home. Should it be 45 feet away before it activates? Sure, maybe I'll turn it down. 30 feet away is good enough for it. Let's see, and fail safe only. I don't know. We'll come back to sanity checks. I haven't played with that in a long time. So, but I think that's the majority of this. And obviously you should do some testing here. Throttle hover. This is usually pretty good no matter what type of battery I am flying. If I'm flying a 6S2P, sometimes it lands a little bit harder, but I always test it in grass. So if you're flying a heavy quad, you might want to bump it up to like 1350 or something. I have tested it. I haven't made a video on it yet, but obviously test over grass with your heaviest batteries and figure out what's working with what rates and what numbers. Presets, we'll come back to this in a second. I'm going to see if I can find something for a 10-inch, but let's take a look at the receiver and see if this is working here. Ooh, it is, which is great. Okay, and it's nice because we're not on battery power yet as well. So it knows it's crossfire, telemetry is enabled, this is working. So let's just make sure that, yeah, so my pitch to the right, okay, roll right is working, great. Roll left, working. Pitch forward, yes, pitch backwards, right, this, and then yaw, of course, to the left, yaw to the right, great. And then you can see your value for throttle up here, down here is good. Okay, so let's go into our modes up here, okay? So arming and all of this other great stuff. So my arm switch, okay, is usually going to be auxiliary 1. So you're going to slide this down, which is the bottom left one. And I highly suggest you use a pre-arm so that you don't automatically hit the switch and then chop your fingers off. Okay, so for me on the Radio Master Zorro I have, it has a momentary button in between on the left and right side. So we're going to look at pre-arm, which is next. Pre-arm, so we're going to add a range. So I use either one of the buttons because it depends on what hand I have my remote. So if I press this once, okay, so auxiliary 5 is just a momentary button press. So I hold this and it makes the quad beep and then I flip the switch. I'll show you guys at a later point in time. But I'm going to add another range for the other button on the other side, which is auxiliary 6. So I can hit either one of these momentary buttons and I hold it while I flip the switch, the quad turns on. Great. Okay, then next, most important, right, GPS rescue. Okay, I have that down here on this side over here. So auxiliary 2 is GPS rescue. And at the same time, with GPS rescue on that same switch, yeah, I make it angle mode right here. Okay, so that way if the quad is too closer for some reason and I throw it and I'm like, oh shit, I don't know what's happening, at least it levels out and I can punch out, yeah, and it'll come back. Okay, so let's see what else we need here. Beeper, okay, so we're going to add a range. So these are going to be the two buttons right here, beep. Okay, 5 and 6, the same momentary buttons I use to pre-arm the quad, or for my beeper as well, which is great because then, you know, if the quad is lost and I'm looking for it in the forest or whatever, I can just be like beep, 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 right? Make it beep. It doesn't have to be a switch I need to throw on and off, so that's actually really convenient. And let's see here, and then flip over crash, which is always nice. We're going to have that over here, and I usually keep that on the left side above the arming switch, which is this one right here. So just that range over there all the way up is arming, yes. And then let's see here. That looks pretty good. I'm going to put angle mode on one more switch too. So on the right side, okay, so remember this was GPS rescue. Actually, that's not right. It should be auto. Boom, right here. So 4. So the switch above my GPS rescue, yeah, I can put it into angle mode if I need to, just for funsies. And I have a couple more switches and positions that I could use if I want to, but otherwise, yeah, it's always in acro mode here. So we'll hit save there. That's good. Do I need anything adjustments? GPS, not yet. Motors, we're gonna have to come look at this in just a second to make sure the motors are all spinning the right way. So let's just see if we can find a preset for like a 10-inch. And I have no idea. Okay, UAV Tech 10-inch 31XX motors. Well, let's take a look and see what we got here. Preset for this class of quadcopter. Okay, so I guess I'm going to try this one, and then I'll work on tuning later. So let's see, filter option 1624 or 48 ESC. I don't know yet. I think it's going to be 48. So I'm going to select that for right now. And because we're going to go over to ESC configurator here shortly as well. So I'm going to set it for that for right now. We'll set pick. We'll agree. And save and reboot. And on that note, let's jump over to ESC configurator really quick just to take a look at that. Yes, so we're going to go over here. All right, so we're going to come over here to ESC configurator. You do need to power up the quad in order for this to work, for it to read the ESCs. But we're going to switch over to BlueJay, which, you know, offers some nice fun things. So we'll hit connect. So once you're inside ESC configurator, we're going to come over here to read settings. Give it a second. And we'll have some different parameters over here you could change if you want to. If you wanted to change the beep strength so it's not so loud when it turns on, you could do that. Same thing with beacon strength. Can always tinker with it. If you ever needed a reverse direction on motor directions, you could do that here too. We're going to do that in beta flight automatically. But what we want to do is flash all of the ESCs. And we're going to come over here, the firmware, we're going to switch that to BlueJay because then we can have some fun little tunes as far as I know. We'll leave this. This is already automatic. The version 19.2, which is current, which is great. And then the version, and we're going to select a 48 PWM frequency. So that'll be perfect. That'll match what we put on the flight controller. And now we can click flash. So that took a couple of attempts, but now it works great. I just logged out and came back in, and now we can do the fun part, which is open the melody editor right here. So if you want some fun tunes, I already know exactly what I'm going to choose, which is Salt and Pepper Push It, because I was playing around with it and checking it out right here. This is what it would sound like. Okay, but let's see what it sounds like when the motors really do it. I love it. That means the last thing we have to do is just motors, and we are ready for a test flight. So all we have left to do is motors right here. We just need to make sure it's right. Props out going this way. And then out here, props out facing backwards. Yeah, so we're just gonna make sure everything's good. So if we come over here, motor direction is reversed, and then we'll save and reboot. And then we'll come back down here. And now we're gonna work on motor direction. We'll do it individually. So you can hit 1. It's down here. I can tell that one's probably going the wrong way, so we're going to reverse that. And if you have a hard time telling, which I do sometimes because I'm blind, I just take a Post-it note and I kind of make a little off-center, arrow action, and I poke a hole in it. Or punch it right on top of the prop. Boom, like this. That way when it spins, I can see what's happening there. Right? It's easier. Okay, so let's move over to number 2. And most likely they're all going to be going the same way, but I could be wrong. Right? So we're going to reverse that. Yeah, better. Number 3. I think this one's probably the wrong direction once again. Right, I'm going to reverse that. Right, and number 4. Yeah. So reverse all of those. Save that. Be good to go. And yeah, so now all the motors are set. and we should be ready to take it out for a test flight and all that great stuff. So by the next time when you see all of this, it'll be all buttoned up, looking perfect. Everything will be glazed. We're going to set it on the scale, and then we'll do some real flight tests.